I've talked before about how much I like superheroes and how in the past about no, year and a half now, I've gotten into comics a lot more and different things of that world and everything with that. I also have discussed a little bit about how a lot of reactionaries handle and either misinterpret comics and other media, or they just really hate things like tokenized characters and stuff like that, which is, anytime there's a character that isn't a cishet white male, for example. But a while ago, I came across this video and I just had to go over this because it's baffling, even just to think about it, and just you'll see. Comics just aren't for women. This is incredible. I have a lot that this is going to get into here. I watched this video originally by The Fourth Age, which I can take some ideas as to what the Fourth Age might be referring to. In fact, here, let's add just another to the giant list of tabs we have up here. What does the Fourth Age mean? The Fourth Age was the time period followed the War of the Ring immediately, and the third... Wait, is this from, like, Lord of the Rings? Oh, it's a fictional... Okay, never mind. I thought it was... Look, with these kind of people, I thought it was a reference to, like, the Fourth Reich. Okay, so it's good to know that that's not it. It has something to do with Lord of the Rings. Fantastic, great. Cool. Not really my cup of tea. I could never get into Lord of the Rings. I don't have the patience for those movies. I think eventually I do want to give them another chance, but so far, no, I can't. And I'm sure as hell not reading them because I don't read. No, I read things that are nonfiction, like articles and stuff, but I won't read like an actual book. No. I'll listen to it, listen. Anyway, but speaking of reading and not reading, I'll read ones with pictures, like comic books. And we're going to get into why this guy here, this is his, brand, his own comic that he's putting out, apparently, Thomas Valiant, which I find funny, by the way, that Valiant is so large on the cover, considering there's actually a comic line called Valiant Comics. Here, we'll just do logo, I guess. Yeah. And I don't know if it's like a, copyright infringement thing or what have you, but I just find that funny. That's like, then again, there's a character called the Marvels, and Marvel's making a movie even called the Marvels, but that's their own property at least. Anyway, semantics. Yeah, comics just aren't for women. Oh God. Yeah, let's just get into this. This will be wild.
Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. So today, ever being the gadfly that I am and bringing up uncomfortable subjects, I want to talk about why comics
Whoops, what did I do?
just aren't for women. But before I get there, I just want to let everyone know that my graphic novel, Thomas Valiant, is still available on Indiegogo. I think I will be closing it down within the week. Now, I've already closed down some of the perks for it, but you can get the main book still. So, you're looking at the art of my graphic novel in the background. It is a traditional...
Wait a minute. The only options for subtitles are in Dutch? What? No way. Hang on a minute. Alright, we're just gonna have to deal with it. I'm sorry, guys. We're not gonna have captions for this, but... hope you can keep up. That's all I can... That's all I can say here.
Amazingly beautiful. Then you might want to click on that link in the description and go on over and see if my graphic novel is for you before it's too late.
Hope I can keep up, damn. Alright, we're gonna try. By the way, I love throughout this entire video about how he's gonna be talking about how comics just aren't for women. He's gonna be constantly showing, like, beautiful women drawn in comics and stuff. Some of it fan art, like this is fan art. A decent amount of it's actually gonna be fan art from what I remember, but yeah.
All right, so as I said, I want to talk about why comics aren't for women. And really, this is something I wanted to go over because of my video that I did on color. That is the recent one which I did on color, which I'll link in the description. And it got me thinking about some of the statements of Kelly Sue DeConnick, because that's the person who actually got me interested in this subject to begin with. And the point being that within that original video that I covered of Kelly Sue DeConnick, where she sparked this idea within me, she said, "I don't see things with women's eyes. That's ridiculous." And I said to myself, okay, you have this heavy, quote unquote, progressive, this declared intersectional feminist ridiculing something that's the time usually you should look it up and see if it's true. Because these people, when something is actually true and they can't dismiss it any other way, they just do so through ridicule. And I looked it up and I found that yes, biologically there's a difference between men's eyes and women's eyes. And women do see things differently than men. Women can see more colors than men can. And men deliberately cannot see as much colors as women can because it allows them to concentrate on shapes and movement.
Oh, okay. I know what he's getting at here. He's getting at the idea, and I don't know if it's like a pseudoscience thing. So much of evolutionary psychology and stuff like that, and different things is not actually known. Like, I don't know if the eyes thing is actually true, but I've told people that before too, and I think it's true. Where it's like, the idea is essentially that, okay, so we have from the Smithsonian Magazine, the results show that women more adept at distinguishing between subtle graduations than were men. Okay, well, this doesn't explain why. So the theory, at least, is the idea is that essentially in caveman times, when, in prehistoric times, when we were all hunter-gatherers type of thing, even though men and women, pretty equally actually hunted and gathered, men would do, of course, a lot of the hunting. And the idea is that essentially, because the men were doing the hunting and the women were, picking out like berries and stuff like that, they became more adept to realize the difference between, like, say, I don't know, a red apple and a poisonous red fruit or vegetable. Just, whereas men didn't really, evolve that concept. And as such, this is part of the reason, as the theory goes at least, that men are more colorblind, or more often colorblind than women, and things like that. It's also why you have things where, more often than not, you can have, kind of the thing where a woman might be picking out paints or something, and she's like, oh, which of these colors do you like? And there's like 5 that are all the same, but they're like different shades of blue, and you look at them, like a guy looks at them and they're just like, I don't know, they're just blue. She's like, what do you mean? No, they're this shade and this shade. It's like, these are all different colors. And the guy's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I know I actually have I can see different shades pretty well, but I'm sure there's a level that I probably can't. I wouldn't be too surprised if there's a level of shading that the human eye can't see in general, but that's a whole nother theoretical concept.
And this allows, biologically, for the woman to be a better caretaker for their child because they can see different fluctuations in the color of skin tone, stuff like that. And men, it allows them to be better hunters because they can see movement and therefore can see their prey, or if they're...
Okay, so he's explaining the theory. And, by the way, this is all of the... this is all fan art. This is... I guess we'll go through the characters real quick here while we're... so I can point them out. I'm not sure. I think those were from his Valiant things. I don't know who some of these characters are. The first one was obviously Wonder Woman. This is Stephanie Brown, which I think is the 3rd Batgirl, because there's Barbara Gordon, who's the redhead we all know. There's the blonde Stephanie Brown. There's a Ginger. No, Ginger Robin. I don't remember her name, but she fights with Batman in The Dark Knight Returns. And this is Red Sonja, which it looks like he's doing 2 things of Red Sonja. By the way, we're only going to have to go through these once because he has these images on loop, but anyway. This actually looks like it might be AI generated. Just with that like paint vibe, you know what I'm talking about?
Going to be prey much easier. But in revisiting that video, and by the way, I'm going to be linking a lot of my videos in the description of this video because I want to give you references and links to all of these things. Those original videos that I reference of mine have in their descriptions the original videos where all of these things were stated by the people themselves. But in that video, she also talked about the fact that women were driven out of comics and men were gatekeeping comics. Her assertion was that women originally were part of comics and read comics just as much as men did. But slowly, over a process of a couple of decades, and those decades would be the late 70s, 80s, and 90s, where comic shops began to emerge as the place where most comics were sold, she said that women were driven out of comics, not just the making of comics, but the reading of comics itself. Again, her claim is that men began to gatekeep comics and make sure that women didn't even read them. And her assertion, again, comes from the idea that it was these comic shops that were the inception point of this gatekeeping. And when I did that
Oh, this is Black Widow.
original video, I kind of dismissed that idea, and so did a lot of you in the comments, especially the women who listened to my video. They said, this is ridiculous. I have been into comic shops all of my life. There is never anyone standing at the door saying, you don't belong here. There's never been someone standing behind the counter saying,
Okay, we're at 340. I wanted to find out, who did he say he based this off of again? What was the interview?
for women. But before I get there, I just want to let everyone nose down some of the perks for it, done traditionally. And if any of that sounds appealing to you at all, my graphic novel is for you. This is something I wanted to go over because of my video that I did on color. That is the recent one which I did on color, which I'll link in the description. And it got me thinking about some of the statements of Kelly Sue DeConnick, because that's the person who actually
Of what? Okay, this is my fault for having it go fast. But I don't want to be, I don't want to, yeah, anyway.
got me interested about some of the statements of Kelly Sue DeConnick, because that's the
Kelly Sue DeConnick? What? Kelly Sue DeConnick comics. What? I didn't even spell it right. Oh, is that how you spell it? Okay. Comics and women. I don't know. Is that how I want to... Kelly Sue DeConnick is the future of women in comics. Okay. Fine. Changing the game. The female comic. Was this the interview? Maybe? He released this in... Wait, maybe this was the interview. All right, we'll go over both of these because I don't really know what he's talking about. It was probably this one. No. We'll go over both of these real quick. Just so we can get the context for what this guy's actually talking about. Can we get English closed captions here? Oh, what the hell did I just do? Wait, that's not... I'm sorry. What the hell? Where did it go? Oh, come on, really? Wait. Okay. Sorry, this is all over the place.
Guest is a leader of the movement that's helped change the game for female comic writers.
Why is the text so small? Oh my god. What the hell? Options? Font? Why would I ever want 50%? Who would ever? Okay, what in the... Also, why is it not centered? What is this shit? Yeah, video override. What the hell? What? Who would ever... Font... Purport... Why would... Here, let's just do reset. There's no way... Background... What? I mean, what the hell?
Illustrators.
Why is it not centered? Okay, whatever. Whatever. At least I'm over here.
While the comic book industry has been seen as a largely male-driven community, women have actually been an important, as we know, part of history since the 40s, though. It's also been recent that many of them have received public recognition, finally, for their contributions. As an award-winning writer of story arcs for Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Supergirl, Captain Marvel as well, Kelly Sue DeConnick has made it her mission to keep the trend going. She's also helping showcase the incredible works of people from diverse genders and giving a voice to young creators ready to help change the game in the comic book world.
This is cool, by the way. This is a good thing. I know this guy's gonna complain about her, and we'll get to it.
Some of the most famous superheroes owe their popularity to the female creators behind them. In the 1940s, Superman was edited by Dorothy Wolfe. She created Kryptonite, rendering Superman invincible. Wonder Woman, whose first...
Actually, Kryptonite... Okay. Kryptonite was created by a guy who did the radio show for Superman, and he basically wanted a day off every now and then, so he was like, oh, just say he got hit with some kryptonite, you know? And they were like, oh, okay. And then it worked its way into the comics and stuff.
Female writer was Joy Hummel. Had to use the pseudonym Charles Moulton. Daredevil, written by Ann Nocenti, tackled social issues like...
Okay. Wonder Woman was, I don't know the exact person, but Wonder Woman was created by a guy who, to her credit, they did think that the guy who created Wonder Woman basically believed that women were superior because the traits, he associated a lot of positive traits with women in general, like, you know, kindness, compassion, you know, all this stuff, right? Which are, of course, very positive traits, but they aren't traits that only women have. In any case, he believes very much in this idea of, I'm not going to look it up, actually, because I'll just explain it. Love through submission, which is why, actually, I can use this at least. Love through submission, which is why, basically, he believed the highest way somebody could show love was through submitting, and it's why there are a lot of not so subtle undertones of BDSM within Wonder Woman, especially Wonder Woman's like early series. It's why, whoops, I want to find, yeah, let me see here. Okay, it's why, I mean, okay, all of these work actually, we can do all of these. I just wanted one from the older comics originally, but whatever. So it's why there are so many moments, and now granted, this is from, this might be fake, this is fake. This is lewd fan art. It's not really lewd, but it's, you know, that was though. Okay, here we go. So it's things like, it's why there were many moments, especially in the early 40s, where Wonder Woman would be tied up like this. Wonder Woman would be tied up in a lot of situations because, again, the guy was really into BDSM and stuff like that, but really believed in this, again, this idea of love through submission, through what it. I want to. No, I'm not going to risk it. I'm not going to risk trying to search for whatever it is. Anyway, moving on.
Like government and feminism, and even villains like Apocalypse, known for the X-Men series, was created by.
However, Wonder Woman does definitely have very heavy feminist messages and ideals as well, which I think is great. Very much about equality and such of that nature.
Legend Louise Simonson. Inspired by the women before her, Kelly Sue DeConnick has been carrying the torch by making sure women are better represented both on the pages and.
The only one I know, by the way, the only female writer that I know of in comics is Gail Simone, who did a lot of work with Black Canary and Birds of Prey involving Barbara Gordon, Batwoman, Batgirl, and Huntress, and I think there was another person, but it might have just been. I know it was just those three.
Behind the scenes of the comic book industry, DeConnick created the hashtag Visible Women to build a database of female creators, changing the game for generations to come.
Please welcome comic book writer Kelly Sue DeConnick to the TAM. Kelly Sue, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello.
Hello, I have this in my hand, Wonder Woman Historia, the Amazon. Let me tell you, just to call you a comic book writer is an understatement. They need to create a whole title for what you've done and what you do.
I'm so incredibly flattered to be here with you today and incredibly intimidated to be following Mr. Oakley.
Oh, listen, the last enforcer. Well, you've enforced rules of your own kind, and that the first of the rules is to include women, and not just include women, but make sure that we are acknowledged for it. You wrote for the comic book character Captain Marvel. You made changes to her name and wardrobe, going from Ms. Marvel to Captain Marvel. That is so significant, and I'm sure when you heard the feedback.
I think she meant that the other way. She went from Miss Marvel to Captain Marvel.
From readers, it had to feel validating as well because it was applauded.
Yeah, absolutely. Not universally, these things never are. But when you come in to working on a comic book character, you have to strike a balance. This is no matter what your initiative is. You need to strike a balance between honoring what has come before you and bringing something new and modern to the table. And that's all we were really trying to do.
She's absolutely correct. And that's true for literally everything. Anytime you want to create something, especially if you're taking some kind of legacy characters like in comics and fiction or anything like that, you want to respect what has come before you. It's the same when you do like... if you're an artist of any sort, you make any kind of music, you do anything, you want to respect what comes before you and create your own stuff as well. You know, nobody's going to like, especially back in like the 70s and 80s, like people love music artists who also raise up like, you know, the Beatles and the Stones and all these other great artists that have, or even like Green Day and Blink-182, you know, bands like that, like my favorite band, as I've talked about before, All Time Low, sings the praises of these kind of bands and the bands that inspired them and stuff like that frequently, because it's like, yeah, you want to pay honor and respect to those that came before you and those that inspired you and things of that nature. And it's especially true if you're taking a character that is loved by many people and reworking them in any way like that.
Was honor what had come before, but also acknowledge that there were some things we could redirect, like the idea that any female comic book character was just sort of like the off-center equivalent of the male character, right? No, these were women who were bringing their own powers and their own qualities to the table, and they deserve to like be in the main line of that lineage.
Well, what I also love is that, and fans love this too, that with Captain Marvel, you gave a military background that focused on her leadership skills. Why do you think that was a game-changing, since that's the theme of this show, decision as well?
She's actually been a military character since her first appearance in 1963, Carol Danvers, but we really tried to emphasize that from a personal experience perspective. So I grew up on Air Force bases because that's what my dad did for a living. And sometimes
So something I want to point out, something that I'm noticing with Kelly and the way that she's talking about stuff right away. I've talked about this before. When you like do representation, you want to do it well, and you don't want to just kind of go on and be like, oh, I'm so great because we're doing this and that. No, you just do it. And in this instance, where she's doing this interview and she's talking about this, she is, but one, she's being respectful about stuff that came before, and she is also acknowledging things like the woman who's interviewing her, Tamron. I'm guessing that's her name. She said, "Oh, and I like that you gave her military background." And Kelly even said, "Actually, no, she's had that." So she's still giving credit. That I think that speaks really well to her character.
In our culture, we don't have a lot of archetypes for women in the military.
Yeah.
And so when you think of men in the military, and there's all these different ideas that you can go to for what that archetype means. But for women, it can kind of mean like a fundraiser, right? Like buy the books. And I was like, no. I grew up around pilots. There is a twinkle in a pilot's eye that is a very special thing. So with Carol as Captain Marvel, we're really focused on kind of giving her that pilot swagger.
Bigger than, and one of the biggest things I think that you've done, obviously what you do creatively is phenomenal, but legacy-wise, you created the hashtag Visible Women, and it grew this database for
I like that, by the way. Obviously, it's a play on Invisible Woman.
female comic book creators. That is so game-changing, but also it will speak to your legacy.
Yeah. When I first appeared at New York Comic Con as a creator, there was a Women of Marvel panel, and there were, I think, 4 women on the stage, and I was the only one who was in one of the main creative roles. And that was kind of jarring to see. And so we started working on expanding that and inviting more women into visible roles. And there was this perception that women didn't want to do this work. And so what was really important was to say, like, no. Look, the industry isn't, people aren't actively trying to keep women out when they're hiring, but they hire the people that they're used to hiring, that they know they can depend on because it's a quick turnaround. So what we wanted to do was raise the visibility, rather, of women who...
Wait, she just said people aren't keeping women out of comics. Her interview, I'm guessing it's this one. We're going to look at the other one in a second, too. But completely oh, we're at 340, by the way. I got to go back to that. Completely discredits this guy's entire video. This is what they do. This is what reactionaries do a lot with this stuff. They'll take something a person says, and in this case, completely lie about it. Like, Kelly literally just... Here, I want to play that back.
They're used to hiring, that they know they can depend on because it's a quick...
Here.
People aren't actively trying to keep women out when they're hiring, but they hire the people that they're used to hiring, that they know they can depend on because it's a quick turnaround. So...
Like, yeah, they're not that... Okay.
What we wanted to do was raise the visibility, rather, of women who not only wanted to work in the industry, but already had been putting the years in, so that it was easier to hire them, so you knew you could depend on them. And once you open that door, more follow. And so the next time I did the Women of Marvel panel, or the last time I did it, rather, there were so many women on the stage, I actually had to sit on the edge of the dais.
That's phenomenal.
This is true about women and any type of... Anybody working in any kind of environment. People are going to naturally hire those that they are more comfortable with, those that they know, which is why it's important to have that representation, because they'll get, like, there's always going to be that person who's like that trailblazer and that first person where it's like, oh, we don't really know, but they give them a chance, and then they show, oh, hey, women can do this job. People that aren't white can do this job. Trans people can do this job, so on and so forth. And I know that sounds really patronizing to to people that aren't cishet, white, or male, but it's how progress actually happens. You have to take these little steps and work with people, and for those that are making those decisions to hire those people and things like that, you have to keep that open mind and give those people a chance. And then eventually you grow more and more. And now, like Kelly was saying, there are tons of different lines of comic book characters that are women, that are women focused, and I think that's awesome.
Up next, how Kelly Sue DeConnick partnered with the late Congressman John Lewis to create
where they're the main character.
comic books with a purpose. That's next.
Oh wait, is this just? Oh, okay.
I am Leanna Kangas. I'm a full-time comic artist. I actually worked at a comic shop for a really long time. It was around 2015 that I made the switch. I came across the Visible Women hashtag back in 2016, where I actually got one of my first collaborators reach out to me. And since then, I've worked with a handful of people from the Visible Women hashtag. Kelly Sue has totally changed the game. Thank you for making that hashtag awesome for us to have reachability in terms of the industry and to support and uplift women and non-binary creators.
Wow, that was Liana, a woman comic book creator who's helped by Kelly's mission for female
That's cool too, and I like that they even said, it like also for non-binary creators. That's pretty dope.
visibility, the male-dominated industry, and Kelly's game-changing efforts don't stop there. I love the connection you have, Kelly Sue, with Congressman John Lewis. You actually had a chance to meet him. For a lot of people, they don't know that he loved comics and graphic novels. He said the novels were a way of leading a civil rights roadmap for future generations. Tell me about meeting him.
Oh, he was such an extraordinary man, and it was a phenomenal honor. I don't know, there's so much to say about him, but I think the thing that was so striking to me was his gentleness. Obviously, he was a very fierce fighter and a resilient and powerful and strong man, but he was also incredibly gentle.
Guys, I want you to pay attention to how Kelly's talking. Her demeanor, the respect and adoration that she has for the people who are, again, who have come before her, the fictional characters that she's working on, the world that she's stepping into. She's just stepping into this and doing her own thing. Yet, people like this guy not Black Widow or Wolverine, but the fourth age here paint people like this to be a bad guy. So like, oh, men are horrible, men are ruining everything. Like, no, that's not at all the kind of person she is. This is why it's important. Like, you can't let these people run away with that kind of narrative, because it's just not true. I'm glad I looked this up.
Dinner with him when we found out. I got a text that let me know that my father-in-law had passed, and the congressman didn't just excuse me from the dinner, but got up and walked me to the maitre d' and made sure that I could get on the service elevator to get down and be with my family. He followed up with me, and then years later, when he met my husband said, "You won't remember this, but," and the congressman took his hand and said, "Your father passed." That was just the kind of person that he was, and just generous and gentle, and the strongest core of any person you could ever have the opportunity to meet. A real superhero, to be honest.
100% a real superhero. Before we let you go, your latest project is what I have in my hand, Wonder Woman Historia. Fans have gone crazy. They say it's a timeless classic. It took 3 years to make it. Why did you want to carefully craft this origin story? Give me a little bit of what was going on in your mind and your creativity process.
I wanted to read for myself. Just, we make the comics we want to read, and I wanted to read a Homerian epic with a woman at the center. And so we swung big. It's an actual comic.
Okay, I'm gonna have to get around to reading this. Everybody says this is not the way to read comics, but I don't care. I am reading through I'm reading through characters, but in chronological order. So like with Superman and Batman, I'm starting from the 30s. Same with like Wonder Woman and all these different things. I tried developing my own headcanon, and so it wasn't working. So I want to read everything that I can get my hands on. And a lot of people say, a lot of comic creators are like, "Oh, that's not how you want to read comics." It's how I do. But I will get to this eventually, in like 20 years from now. No, I might actually just check this out, because that's pretty cool. I like it. Also, I have to wonder what she's wearing. Are these? I think either bananas or fish, or like nails or something. I don't know. It's probably. I'm also curious if this is Diana. Diana, Wonder Woman, Diana. I don't know, but I'm very interested to see that that's a book too. That's cool. I was thinking it was just like an artwork or a thing where she's talking about her time working on Wonder Woman, something like that. But no, it looks to be. I'm liking this Kelly DeConnick. I might actually look into some of her comics. We might actually look into them together in a minute.
Remarkable. It is remarkable. I'll tell you what. My team and I.
Phil Jimenez, and he's just.
It is. I feel like it should be framed. I felt bad touching it. I said to my team, "Can't touch this." And we were just talking about what comic book locations are still in New York City. So much has changed over time. But what we know is wherever this is, there are fans, and we are fans of yours. Congratulations for changing the game. But again, more important in so many ways is providing an opportunity for other people from marginalized communities to get involved and be appreciated for their work as well.
That's dope. Yeah. So definitely doesn't live up to the vibe that the fourth team, the fourth, what was it called? The Fourth Age. Definitely doesn't live up to that. Okay, so I also wanted to check this out, just to make sure I'm going over all of the possible, things that reviews he could be referring to.
Kelly Sue DeConnick has a job she truly loves.
I am a comic book and television.
Okay, this is not. Oh no. Are the subtitles going to be super off? Hang on.
But not just any comic book writer. She's the current author of DC Comics' Aquaman, the first woman to ever have an extended.
Jesus. Okay, these these are awful. Hang on a minute. Funnily enough, if we speed it up again, the subtitles might actually keep up. Let's see here. Why are we? What is going on with the? I have no idea. Okay. Here, we're going to go back to here.
Run on the series.
Comic books, video games, they're male-dominated industries.
Nope. Okay. Can't do. I don't know what's up with those subs, so we're not doing it.
Love this. That doesn't need to be a consideration.
How did you first get started in comic book writing? Where did it all begin?
I wrote comic book reviews for like $25 a review or something. I had no inkling that, this is going to be a very important part of your life going forward. None whatsoever.
From there, DeConnick began doing adaptations of Japanese and Korean comics into English. In 2010, while working at Marvel Comics, she played a pivotal role in transforming Captain Marvel from a bikini-wearing superhero to Carol Danvers, an Air Force pilot with a military background. That transformation inspired the blockbuster film earlier this year, which generated more than $1 billion at the box office. DeConnick served as a consultant on the movie.
What I bring to the table matters, and that 10 and 11-year-old girls could articulate that to me, that's big. If Captain Marvel is the first line in my obituary, I'm okay.
It's inspired another generation.
If it empowers just the girls that were in that line at that one show, it was worth it.
After she left Marvel, DeConnick started the hashtag Visible Women in March of 2016. Its purpose, to increase the number of women working in the comic book industry.
I would be asked by my colleagues who would say, love to put a woman artist on this book, but we just don't know where to find a woman artist that draws comics. You know, it was just like, you guys, it's really not hard. And so we started that hashtag specifically to raise the visibility.
It's an issue DeConnick has been vocal about for years.
Our culture is kind of constructed to set women against each other, to pretend as though we are all competing for a single seat at the table. And that's just not the case.
She's also setting a powerful example at home with her daughter Tallulah.
Pretty cool what your mom's done over her whole career, isn't it?
Yeah. In fact, she inspired me because when I grow up, I want to be a children's book author.
Oh, it's cute.
With her success, DeConnick says more women are still needed in the industry because they too have stories to tell.
Don't wait for someone to make you do it. Don't wait for someone to give you the paid opportunity to do it. Begin telling stories. All you need is a piece of paper and a pencil. Start now.
Meeting DeConnick was such a...
There is no... She's just gonna... Okay, cool. There's nothing negative about these. What is this guy's issue? Well, I mean, we're going to go through the guy's channel a bit more here later, but you can see the kind of content this person makes. Very much similar to, like, the Yellow Flash. Who's that guy? The Quartering, you know, all kind of people like that. You know, the kind of stuff No Bullshit would have made. So, yeah.
At the door saying you don't belong here. There's never been someone standing behind the counter saying you should leave. But after learning a bit of new information, I want to go over that point again. Now, first of all, I would say it's not a good idea to make knee-jerk reactions with these kinds of people. These quote-unquote
Wonder Woman, obviously. This, I don't think this is fan art. I couldn't tell you who this is by, but I know this is definitely from an actual comic.
Heavy progressives, these intersectional feminists, because part of what they do is they mix some truth with a big lie. And therefore, when you have a knee-jerk reaction, and I'm not just saying you, the audience, had a knee-jerk...
It's really funny that he says, you know, what they do is they mix some truth with a lie, whereas all that he's done so far is lie in this video.
Reaction, I'm saying I did as well, so I'm accusing myself here, not you. But since they try to sell their ideology in a sophisticated way, that is to say through sophism, that is to say through an argument which doesn't actually have truth behind it, but has enough truth to make you think it does, then you have a problem. Because
this doesn't even have any truth behind it. So far, his argument is literally just all lies.
You have a knee-jerk reaction, then people who are looking and seeing the truth within that argument are saying, I'm going to dismiss you, because obviously they're saying something that is at very least partly true. And I believe the reason why it's so easy to dismiss these people and their ideology is because of the way that they play with language. One of the tools of the quote-unquote progressive person is to say that language doesn't have any real tie to reality. The old idea is that the bedrock of language is reality.
This is fan art.
Actually,
I don't know if it is. I think it's fan art, and it's on like ArtStation or something. There's a few different characters that are done in this kind of style. I think it's a really good style, by the way. But yeah, anyway.
The words that you use...
Black Cat. Or, I mean, Catwoman. Oh, no. Fans are going to hate me.
...are tied to what is real, and therefore you can go back to their definitions and find out what they actually are. And, as I have said a number of times, this is the exact point of origin of logic and reason. You need...
No, but that is how language works. Like, there's not such a... God, I remember realizing this when I was a kid. Like, language, math, measurements, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as, even in measurements and math and stuff, like, 2 + 2 is not a real thing. You know what I mean? Like, the number 2 is not a real thing. We have dedicated that word to mean more than one of something but less than 3, but the way that language and all these things work in the first place is it's just, yes, language means what we as a society, as a group of people, decide that it means. That's how it works.
Need to be able to define things as they are according to reality. If you can't do that, you don't have reason, you don't have logic. But their point is that language is a plaything, and that the meanings of words can be changed on a whim depending what the individual using them...
Not on a whim, over time, just like how anything else evolves.
...to give them meaning for. I would say in a Nietzschean...
This is Sarah Pazzini, Witchblade, one of my favorite characters that I've gotten into recently. Really, really good comic. Really good comic by Image Comics.
Dynamism kind of way, which isn't a coincidence. So the thing is that when these people that are...
Very 90s.
...quote-unquote progressive, use language, even simple words, they often mean things which normal people, you and I, would give a completely different meaning for. So in order to get into all of that, I want to go back to the origin point of all of these ideas. And it's going to take some time. I'll get back to the comics and why comics aren't for women at the end. But I don't think skipping to the end is going to do you any good, because if you don't go through the process of the original ideas...
I know these characters, but I don't... I think this is Cyblade. And I don't remember who this one is called. But I know she's... I have a bookmark full of characters and teams that I'll read through. And I have a... well, I have a bookmark randomized that just chooses one for me, and I say, okay, I'll go ahead and read their next issue or what have you. I don't remember her name, though. It's like Vendetta or something, or like... I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure that's Cyblade, and it doesn't matter. I'm just trying to add some like levity here, too, because this guy's so fucking dumb, as we'll continue seeing.
You're not going to understand, I don't think, what I have to say at the end. So, here's the thing. What Kelly Sue DeConnick and intersectional feminists like her declare is that there is no difference between a man and a woman. Absolutely.
That is not...
Absolutely no difference. This is the bedrock of their ideology. But it seems to conflict with another fundamental point, not quite a bedrock, but a fundamental principle also of their ideology, which is that women are oppressed by men. And the question becomes, if women and men are exactly the same, how is it that you can say that men...
First of all, this is Psylocke, and I don't actually know the difference between the two versions of Psylocke. I know there were two people that... It was like one that was Captain Britain and one that was someone else. I don't know, but this is the one that's like the most common, popular one right now. Anyway, so let's address that part right there, because I think that was a lot of projection from him right there. Let's go back.
By men. And the question becomes, if women's fundamental principle also of their ideology, which is that women are with another fundamental point, not quite a bedrock, but a fundamental principle of their ideology. But it's between a man and a woman. Iconic and intersectional underneath, you're not going to understand, I don't think, what I have. There is no difference between a man and a woman. Iconic and intersectional feminists, you're not going to understand, I don't think, what I have to say at the end. So here's the thing. What Kelly Sue DeConnick and intersectional feminists like her declare is that there is no difference between a man and what... I'll get back to the comics and why ideas under women at the end, but I don't think skipping to the end is going to do you any good, because if you don't go through the process of the original ideas underneath, you're not going to understand, I don't think, what I have to say at the end. So here's the thing. What Kelly Sue DeConnick and intersectional feminists like her declare is that there is no difference between a man and a woman. Absolutely no difference. Bedrooms, if it would point to a difference between the same, how is it that you can say that men as a group are... And the question becomes, if women and men are exactly the same, how is it that you can say that men as a group are oppressing women? Because
that's not what she was saying. At least not in the interview we just watched. Her whole point was that, well, one of the things she said at the end, there were a lot of women kind of feel like they have to compete for like a seat at the table, for one seat at the table, and that's just not the way it has to be. And that's true. A lot of people look at really life in general and working in any kind of industry as, you know, very competitive and stuff, and it doesn't have to be. It absolutely doesn't have to be. It's a very unhealthy thing that is pushed, especially by things like capitalism and things of that nature.
That would point to a difference between men and women. And you've already said that women and men are exactly the same.
But he said something, I can't find it apparently again, but he said something where he said, basically, their words don't mean anything and they can just change them to mean what they want. That's his projection, because again, he, even from the video we just saw with Kelly, like, all he's doing so far is just lying about this.
Same. Well, the answer to that, according to an intersectional feminist, the way they get out of that little conundrum is to redefine the very nature of the word man and woman. But let me take a step back just for a moment. I would say that the inception point of all of this feminist rhetoric, especially this intersectional feminism that you see around you today, comes from a very specific place. It does have origins and play severely into the ideas
Emma Frost
of Marx, but I really think it comes from Nietzsche and his teacher, who would be Schopenhauer, and really their rejection of truth itself. Now, mankind have been rejecting truth forever and ever. I usually go back to the statements of Plato in 400 BC, talking about how the rejection of truth and setting yourself up as the truth is what he calls the greatest evil. So
why do conservatives and reactionaries, why do they like to quote progressive, like, philosophers and stuff like that? Nietzsche, God is dead and we killed him, Nietzsche. That Nietzsche? Really?
Mankind have been doing this for a long time, certainly. But honestly, I would say the modern thinkers that popularized what we see around us as the current rejection of truth and reality was, again, Nietzsche and...
Supergirl, this is This is actually in a comic as well, signed by the artist who drew her. I think it's probably a variant, actually.
His teacher Schopenhauer, because both of them predicated their ideas on, I have thrown back the curtain of reality, and what lies behind that curtain is simply nothing, is simply a void. Now they go on in their own ways to say, how do we create a Superman, and particularly Superman, in such a world where no truth actually exists? But I'll get to that in a moment. So one of the things about Nietzsche is that if you have studied a lot of Nietzsche, and I had to do so a lot in university, and if you've studied a lot of the ancients, which would include Augustine of Hippo, you will see that Nietzsche said nothing new at all. All he did was to take all of the writings, the fundamental principles of the writings of Augustine, and to restate the entire system according to a way that doesn't have any reference to truth. And the funny thing is that Augustine himself actually talks about this happening in his own time, where he says there are vices and there are virtues. You need to beware of these societies and these people and these thinkers who take virtues and turn them into vices and vices and turn them into virtues. And this is exactly what Nietzsche himself did. In taking the entire system of Augustine and removing any concept of truth from that system, what he does fundamentally is to take everything that Augustine called a virtue and turn it into a vice, and everything Augustine called a vice and turn it into a virtue.
So he brings up this vices and virtues concept. Great album by Panic at the Disco, by the way. But he brings up this vices and virtues concept. And it's really weird where he's going to go with this, as we'll see here. He's going to keep going back to this idea that basically feminists and people that say they're fighting for equality, feminists, progressives, etc., want to flip vices and virtues and make it so that things that are virtuous are actually bad and things that are vices are actually good. But we definitely do get a bad rep for this, and it doesn't help when you have people that are basically anti the concept of, like, you know, self-improvement and stuff like that, and anti and kind of too far in the direction of, like, oh, you're perfectly fine the way you are, don't ever improve, that kind of, like, yeah, that's really bad. But it is not a progressive idea to just treat your body like shit, treat your mental health like shit, and just waste away and be sad and depressed. Those aren't good things. Like, those aren't progressive ideas. Those are ideas that some people who claim to be progressive errantly push, but they are not in and of themselves actually progressive or good even. But he's really going to fixate on this concept of flipping vices and virtues, and it's very odd. This is Starfire, by the way.
And all this does is allow human beings to be vicious. That is to say, to be full of vice, and at the same time, to think themselves virtuous. And again, as I said, it's all predicated on a rejection of truth. So this new rejection of truth that started to take hold in academia and then to be disseminated into the rest of society really took hold. Because again, mankind is always looking for that way to reject truth so that he can just indulge himself in his passions and be vicious. And I'm sure someone in the comments is arguing with me right now saying, this is not what Nietzsche intended. I would say, well, possibly yes, possibly no. You may be correct on that, but this is the result of what he actually said.
What does this have to do with anything? What is... What? Donna Troy. I want to say her name's Miss Martian, but I feel like she has an actual name. And I don't know who this one... I have her in my list too, but I don't know her name off the top of my head.
What he intended aside, this is the result of that kind of thinking. Because again, you take that kind of thinking and you mix it with reality and the truth that actually exists behind reality. And
one of my favorites, Black Canary. She can't even save this video. None of them can.
This is what you get. But here's the thing. As I have said in a number of other videos, both Schopenhauer and Nietzsche hated women. They really hated them. Both of them, by the way, grew up without a father, and Nietzsche had no male role models at all. He was raised by his mother, his aunts, and his sisters. And he states within his works that these women stripped him of all his masculinity. And really the same thing happened with Schopenhauer and his mother in a different way. But the point was...
All right, let's just look that up real quick. Did Nietzsche's apparent misogyny is part of his overall strategy to demonstrate that our attitude towards sex gender are thoroughly cultural and often destructive of our own potential as individuals and as a species and may be changed. Wait a minute. His apparent misogyny is part of his overall strategy. Okay, wait. You mean ironic misogyny, like what Vosh does all the time? Oop, excuse me. Seriously? Oh my god, that's insane. I'm not even a big fan of ironic misogyny. I don't like when Vosh or other people do that either. But yeah, dude, I don't know. This guy just keeps taking people who are actually pretty well-meaning out of context, and never be afraid to fact-check someone on these kind of things, by the way. I had my dad show me something. He showed me like a doom and gloom propaganda video, and I fact-checked it the entire way through, and he told me afterwards, he's like, well, I don't like that you fact-checked everything, but what did you think of it? And my friend at the time had told me, they were like, you know, think about that concept. He doesn't like that you fact-checked it. What does that mean? And yeah, be willing to fact-check different things like this, and if someone has an issue with that, it's not a good sign. Because if you research something and fact-check something, truth can only be shown to be more true.
Was that both of these men saw women as being that thing which drags true men down, and they rejected
Emma Frost again.
them in such a way that they wanted people to think of them as really the slime of the earth. That's what Schopenhauer actually calls women, the slime of the earth from which true men are born. Almost as if they were something like a primordial ooze from which we emerge as God.
Wait. Schopenhauer, what's this guy's name? Schopenhauer. Women are the slime. Would we ever have George Eliot? Would we ever have love? What? Wait, hold up. Let's just... I don't know who Schopenhauer is, but let's just... Bro, I don't know, man. Is this guy just... What the hell? Woman is not born? Quote, okay, this is a... Bro. This guy is just making shit up. And the reason all this is important, well, we'll go into why this is important. This is probably going to be a multi-part video, by the way, at this point. We'll find out, I don't know. But, 971 likes, 21.3 thousand subscribers, 300 comments, 11,000 views. There are people that will, these kind of things, and the like Gamergate kind of, you know, woke, you know, anti-progressive stance are very much thresholds and doors into far-right ideology and stuff like that. It's how a lot of people fall down the alt-right pipeline and did back in like 2014, 15, 16. And we'll go over some of that, and we'll go over, you know, preventing some of that and critiquing some things here and there, but, you know, we'll go through it.
Like beings as men. So the idea of Nietzsche's Superman is indeed a Superman. Women are very specifically not part and parcel of this entire way of thinking. But here's the thing. When men started to follow these ideas of Schopenhauer and Nietzsche and start to act in a vicious way, what did women do? Well, the women of society often provide a sober second thought for men.
Okay, this is really cute. It's definitely fan art, but this is, although her teeth are a bit weird, but other than that, still Starfire. Starfire was like my first, like, crush, I guess, as a kid. You know what I mean? Like, I'd see her in, like, the Teen Titans show, and I don't know, I really liked her character.
But in this instance, they did not. What they did was to say, okay, look at all these men being vicious in their rejection of truth. I want that for me as well. Therefore, how do I get that? I can't go back to the ideas of Nietzsche and Schopenhauer because they reject women in all of their way of thinking.
By the way, so that we're keeping score so far, the Fourth Age here has literally lied about everything he's talked about. We're 4 for 4 so far. Just so we're clear on that.
Or I have to create a new way of thinking that allows me to access both Schopenhauer and Nietzsche. And really, I could go back to, at the very least,
why
Simone de Beauvoir and Comte and go through the strains of this kind of thinking. But the thing was that basically,
this is definitely fan art. This is Raven, also from Teen Titans. Not my cup of tea, especially when I was a kid, but a lot of people like her, especially to this day. I kind of feel uncomfortable with how this one's drawn. I got to be real here.
The idea that they came up with was the erasure of the man-woman divide. Yeah. That's what it's called typically in philosophy. That is to say that women and men are exactly the same. And if women are exactly the same as men, then women can participate in those Nietzschean ideas and therefore reject truth in the same way and therefore be just as licentious, just as vicious as any man. Again, being sophisticated, this was not their stated purpose, but this...
I agree with that. No, I thought we were done with that image for a minute. I agree with that. I've talked before about the reality that women are, you know, of course, human beings, just like anybody else. They are not, they're not perfect angels, but they're not like horrible demons either. They just are. They're just, yeah, they're just humans. They're people who are capable of really good things, really bad things, etc. I wanted to get a badass picture of Raven that kind of encapsulated her character while this guy's showing off this lewd fan art. Not that I have a problem with lewd fan art at all, and we'll get into fan art and sexualization of women in comics and all that. It's coming. But first, I wanted to get into what led to all this in the first place.
The meaning behind all of this rejection of the man-woman divide. And the man-woman divide is really basically saying there is a difference between a man and a woman. But again, the question becomes, if there is no difference between a man and a woman, how can men actually oppress women? Well, the point being that from that, the early feminists and the people who lead up to the intersectional feminism that you see right now got around this by saying that, well, you see, it's not actually men versus women, it's maleness versus femaleness. And they come up with the idea that, well, basically, since they're redefining...
You could say masculinity versus femininity, and it's hilarious that he's showing Wonder Woman for this, because that's what a lot of her character and the divide of Themyscira and putting mankind in general outside of Themyscira and not going to man's world, as they call it, or anything, and just staying on what's called Paradise Island. What a lot of that is about and challenging is this idea of, like, can men and women, you know, coexist in different things? Or are men always going to try to subjugate? And can we find common ground? And at the end of the day, the answer is yes, but yeah.
Defining what a virtue and a vice is, and basically flipping them over so that virtues are vices and vices are virtues, they're going to redefine them in a very specific way, according
Barbara Gordon, Batgirl.
To this feminist ideology. And the way that they redefine them is that everything traditionally male is a vice, and everything traditionally female is a virtue. Because they really did realize that there is a difference, a fundamental physiological difference between a man and a woman, but they could not admit that. It reminds me of, I can't remember his name, he was a defector from the Soviet...
Wait, no, hold up. Everything, no, it's not that everything male is a vice and everything female is a virtue. It's that we have taken, over time, a lot of things that are vices to associate that with masculinity. Smoking, gambling, drinking. Promiscuity, you know, just sleeping around and not worrying about what happens to the woman afterward, you know, those kind of things. Getting into senseless fights. These are things that are often associated with masculinity. It's also referred to as, yes, I know this is a buzzword, but it is true, toxic masculinity. But all that actually means is traits that are traditionally associated with masculinity and manliness that are actually toxic and hurt men and or other people. But the same thing is true with femininity. There are absolutely vices and negative traits that are associated traditionally with femininity, like, let's be real, cattiness and bitchiness, gossiping, what's the, oh god, what is it called? Non-confrontational, like really avoiding confrontation in a very unhealthy way. And other things like that. There are traits like bravery and strength and accountability and stuff like that that are traditionally associated with men and masculinity. And there are positive traits like kindness, gentleness, compassion that are traditionally associated with femininity. So the reality is there are positive traits associated with masculinity and positive traits associated with femininity. And yes, of course, men and women can both equally adapt and or inhabit these traits however that applies to them, or non-binary people, whatever the case, you know. But the reason that a lot of vices are associated with masculinity is just because men were the ones that more typically did them. And they were the things that women were more or less, yes, pushed out of, like, you know, excuse me, again, gambling, smoking, you know, all these other different things. Hell, even swearing for a long time was something that wasn't ladylike. And like, the fuck? Me, I don't think I could, even be friends with or date or really have any kind of relationship with a woman who didn't swear like I do. But they don't have to swear as much as me, but, it would probably help.
Union in the 80s, he said, I was the perfect communist. Why? Because I read only the things that a communist would read. I said only the things that a communist would say.
I don't know who this character is. I know she's like a female Shazam. The kid that says Shazam and has lightning come down on him and then he turns into like a hulking dude. This is Zatanna, and this is Barbara Gordon again.
I thought only the thoughts that a communist would think, and I did all of that knowing that it was all a lie. And this is the exact same thing with these feminists. I always get people arguing with me in the comments saying, this is not what they truly believe. I understand this is not what they truly believe, but they do that knowing the entire thing is a lie and push these agendas knowing that the entire thing is a lie just to get their way. So they realize there is a fundamental difference between a man and a woman physiologically, but they reject it completely at every turn whenever they open their mouths.
What, Power Girl, this is not something that men... or that feminists and progressive people inherently reject. We understand that there's a difference between men and women, obviously. They do the same thing when they talk about trans people, where they're like, well, they don't even know, they don't even understand the difference between men and women. No, they do. That's why a lot of them have gender dysphoria in the first place. That's why they are trans and they want to transition, because they realize that their anatomy does not match who they are on the inside. They know there's a difference. We know there's a difference. Why do they... Nobody acts like there's no difference. It's just that within those differences, we can still find common ground and find equality and togetherness in general, rather than letting our differences tear us apart. We allow them to complement each other.
And one of the key ways in doing this is the fact that, well, maybe...
By the way, just real quick, I want to point out, because everyone always wonders about, like, oh, why does she have her tits out like this? Well, funny thing, there was actually a story that talked about this, because she went through many costume designs trying to, and we will talk about this more later when we talk about, like, sexualization of women and stuff in comics. But basically, she went through many different comic designs over her inception in, like, the 60s, I'm pretty sure. And one of the things she ultimately decided on with this was, I can't remember who it was. I want to say it was George Perez, but I'm not entirely sure who the author was. But they wrote and basically made it for her that the reason she has this is because she wants to have a symbol, but she doesn't want it to be Superman's or anything like that. She wants to have her own symbol. She just doesn't know what that is yet. In all honesty, this look, of course, is so iconic for her at this point that it would be kind of weird to change anything. But you know what? That's how things are. Of course, it can change. It can be adapted in different things. Even if you did just get rid of the boob window, wouldn't be the end of the world, or just put it up a little bit more. Of course, this is fan art, so it's a little accentuated more. Like I said, we'll talk about this more specifically in a bit. We got to get through this first. This guy is...
A woman could reach that bottom rung of being a man, but they could never reach the height of being a man. Therefore, they have to tear men down, all men down, to that bottom rung. So that's what a man is defined.
So his thought is that we don't actually believe in equality. Women actually just want to tear men down. And look, there are women that are like that, 100%. There are feminists that will claim to be feminists that are these radical feminists, a lot of them are TERFs, by the way, that are very anti-men, like, broadly speaking, in general, and they just demonize all men. 100% that exists. But that is not the norm. That is not what people who actually believe in and fight for equality... It's not like we, in the back of our minds, are like, oh, actually, women are inferior, so we have to tear men down. And those of us that are men who would identify as feminists, as I do, feminist, egalitarian, MRA, all that, whatever, that we would, like I or other people think like, oh, well, yeah, men are superior, we have to put ourselves down to women's level. No, what? No.
So that they can be men as well. So this is part and parcel of the erasure of the man-woman divide, to tear men down to their lowest level so that women at their highest level can just barely say, look, I'm just the same as you. And again, the entire thing is so that they can reject truth, so that they...
Not the same, Black Cat, another one of my favorite female superheroes. Not the same. This is actually from a comic, by the way. This isn't fan art. But anyway, not the same. Just, again, complement and equal. Like, not the same, but equal.
Can be vicious. Which, again, is not just women, because they're doing this as a reaction to men doing it first. And I think someone in the comments might be saying, this is not actually what they do. Well, I'll give you a little bit of evidence that this is actually what they do, and this is actually what they promote. It is the new year right now. Happy New Year, by the way. And typically, feminists do this thing around the end of the year or the beginning of the new year. It is called an editing party. So they get a whole bunch of feminists together, and they stay on their computers, usually at least a day, maybe a couple, and they go through as many open source web pages as possible to change them all to reflect the feminist ideology. And
I don't know who this is, but I looked this up. There is no such thing. This guy is just lying the entire time. What is an editing party? There is no such thing as an editing party. How to edit party photos. How to edit pool party scene. Edit your party. There is no such thing as an editing party. This guy is just lying. That is all he's doing the entire time. This is insane. 971 likes. Only 32 dislikes. By the way, I don't know how the dislike bar is back, because I don't have the extension that shows dislikes, so I don't know how I can see it. But in any case, I'm proud to be one of those, by the way.
One of the ones that they concentrate on is Wikipedia. And I came across this because someone was doing an article saying that you really can't trust Wikipedia anymore. This is probably about 10 years ago that I ran across this. And one of their examples is that what these editing parties of feminists actually do, one of the main points that they try to destroy throughout every open source article is the idea that there is a difference between a man and a woman.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, and then let's look up. Yeah, oh, I did. Yeah, I looked this up too. Feminist editing party. Not a thing! List of feminist parties. Feminist edit-a-thon seeks to reshape Wikipedia. Hold up. Alright, let's see what this is. A feminist edit-a-thon seeks to... This was in... this is published March 11, 2016. Okay. Let's see here. The Interference Archive, a volunteer-run... Oh, the Interference Archive, a volunteer-run institution dedicated to gathering the cultural ephemera of social movements, sits across from street trendy I don't give a fuck about that. Okay, Awful Bones, a group of 20 or so descended, yada, yada, yada. Okay, Wikipedia edit-a-thon, themed around art and feminism. One of a series of such events unfolding throughout the city. They gathered in a space adjacent to the main archive, a small room, da, 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 yada, yada. The edit-a-thon began with restatement of the day's main objective, to combat Wikipedia's well-documented gender gap by improving, however incrementally, its coverage of women in the arts. In spite of the site's ostensibly egalitarian, accessible format, more than 90% of its... Is that how you do that? Percent? Is that how you write that? I thought it was... It doesn't matter. Of its editors are male, according to a study conducted... Actually, so real quick... Oh god, fuck off. Man who wrote most of Wikipedia. Where's the guy? This is the guy. This is actually the person who wrote a lot of Wikipedia. Stephen Pruitt. So, yeah. No hate. I just want to point it out. Like, good for him, because, like, holy shit, Wikipedia is incredibly, like, good and informative. So, anyway, just... Okay, according to a study conducted in 2011, yada, 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 less than 5%... Okay, I don't think this is the right way to write percent, but whatever. Less than 5% of its super users, people with more than 500 edits to their names, are women. Many causes have been suggested for this, from Wikipedia's code-heavy editing interface and its continuous and sometimes hostile user culture. What results, however, is an indisputable failure to consider certain topics that are a particular interest to women. Note that the entry for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, a fictional team of martial arts reptiles, is twice the length of the entry for Toni Morrison, a real-life Nobel Prize-winning author. Well, yeah, because it has more content to it, I would imagine, right? At the archive, Jim Henderson, a white bearded man in enormous glasses and a beige Wikipedia editor baseball cap, flagged down the participants as they entered and asked whether they had a Wikipedia account. For the many who did not, he preferred his wheezing Dell laptop and wait. Proffery? I'm sorry. I don't mean to be pulling an Aiden Ross here with fascism and authenticity, or whatever he said for authoritarianism. I don't mean to be pulling an Aiden Ross here, but he I don't know. Is it proofread? Is that just proof? It's proofread. I'm an idiot. It's proofread. He proofread his wheezing Dell laptop and a. Okay, whatever. The point is, so they're not changing things. They're just making sure that there's more content for women in general. They're just being like, hey, there's not enough on this like famous female author. Let's fix that. Let's add more to her content. Okay, cool, great, fine, nothing wrong with that. These editing parties, they want to change. Oh, God damn.
And whenever they come across,
remember what he said about how they take a part of the truth, they take a lie, and they put a little bit of the truth in it. Yeah, what is this, projection? That's all that he's doing.
That presents actual scientific evidence that shows there's.
What is it? What's that saying? Every accusation by a conservative is a confession. And look, I know like that one dude that I responded to, he was like, I'm not actually conservative. I don't care. You know, if they're being reactionary and stuff like this, they are at the very least being culturally conservative in some way. So I don't really care what their political leanings are. Although I also very much believe, as I've talked about before, everything is political. That's a whole nother thing. Moving on.
There's a fundamental difference biologically between a man and a woman. They edit the entire thing to make it look like the entire thing is social and not biological.
This is really good art of Silver Sable. I don't know. I know vaguely what this is from, but I don't know actually what this is from. There are several. It doesn't matter.
They say, look, the only reason that men are actually stronger and have a higher bone density and a bigger lung capacity than women is because they are taught from the very beginning when they are little children by society to go out and be rough and to do rough play, and therefore they have more exercise than women, and therefore they build up more muscle mass, more bone structure, more lung capacity than women do, and society does the exact opposite to women and pushes them in a corner and says, no, you can't go outside and play, and they become weak and anemic.
I'm not even going to dignify this. There's no way people are actually that stupid to think that. Like, again, we understand that there are biological differences. It's just that a lot of the differences and like the issues between men and women, most of them, all of them, I would say, are brought on by society. So like, yes, men are generally stronger. You're an idiot if you think otherwise. I know for a fact there are women who could beat me up, you know, but like, and a lot of different men, but like on average, yes, I'm going to be stronger than a woman on average. Any man, even this guy, is going to be stronger than a woman on average. But that's besides the point.
And this is why men are actually stronger than women, because it's all a societal thing.
Oh yeah, and anyone who would say different is just an idiot.
It's got zero to do with biology at all. And again, I'm sure that in this New Year's Day, someone is doing that exact thing right now on the internet as part of an editing party. They're going out there and pushing this feminist agenda and making sure that the science of actual biology is ignored for their ideological bent of no difference between a man and a woman. Now, in addition to this, the greatest leap forward for this idea,
it says right there, but it's domino,
was in the 80s and the 90s, where these feminists, quite specifically, took this idea that everything masculine was a vice and everything feminine was a virtue and inserted it in.
He's doing it again. He's just repeating himself. Okay, I'm not.
Into the American judicial system. Because if you know anything about the American judicial system right now, you'll know that women typically get a very small sentence compared to men for the exact same crime.
That is true, and that is a form of sexism that benefits women. There are forms of sexism that benefit women and forms of sexism that benefit men. But it's still sexist. It's still wrong. It still needs addressed and done away with.
You'll know that if it comes down to a he said, she said within a courtroom, the vast majority of people will always side with the woman as being the one telling the truth because they have inserted into the basic structure of the laws itself the idea that men are evil and women are saints.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I was talking about that earlier, yeah, 100%. I'm not sure who this is. I want to say this is Jane Foster, who becomes like the female Thor, but I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if this is like a she actually grew arms thing here, or if it's one of those, like, it's just drawn because she's throwing her arms about really quickly or something. I don't know.
And again, this was part of the feminist movement within the 80s and 90s.
I think she actually has those many arms.
And they have written books on this saying, yeah, we did this in the 80s and the 90s. We had to massage the data. We had to make sure that all of those studies that showed anything that was opposed to our ideology were put in a corner and no one ever looked at them. We even made up facts. We even made up studies. And we presented all of these to the people who make these laws and inserted the entire thing into the system of justice of the United States.
This is Jean Grey, the Phoenix. I can't, like, what is he even saying at this point?
Quite specifically, right now, just come out and say it. This is what they did. And quite specifically, they admit again that it was all based upon a lie, all based upon false evidence. But they did it because they had to ensure at a fundamental and just a systemic level that women are seen as saints and men are seen as demons. Or again, as I have said, that everything masculine, traditionally masculine, according to the nature, that is to say the biology of a man, is seen as being a vice, and everything according to the biology of a woman is seen as being a virtue. And again,
Huntress. This is Huntress. Specifically the Helena Bertinelli Huntress. There's actually a statue based on this art. Pretty cool. There's actually a lot of, like, different statues, little different figurines based on things like this. Based on drawings of these characters. Pretty cool.
And this is to make sure that you tear down men so that they can only access masculinity at the most basic level, so that women can claim that they are just the same as men, so that they can then access these ideas which allow them to be just as licentious and vicious as men, which fundamentally at its base is just a rejection of truth itself. And I've gone over this in a number of videos because...
Wait. So they want to make all the things that men do seem bad so they can do the bad things too and then say they're equal? That doesn't even make any sense.
I cover Marvel and Marvel podcasts a lot, and they talk constantly about power and empowerment. Again, as I've said in those older videos, this is language that they have twisted to mean something completely different. For them, for an intersectional feminist, when they use the word power, what do they mean? Well, they mean male power. And when they use the word empowerment, they mean female power. And how they define those things is that male power is defined by being competitive, individualistic, and taking risks, where empowerment, which is female power, is defined by cooperation, dialogue with others, and not rocking the boat. And so back to the question,
empowerment is just feeling or being made to feel powerful, that like about a situation. For example, a very masculine thing that I and many other men do is work out. When I go to the gym and I'm working out and I see the results over a period of time, I feel empowered by doing that. That's true for anything. When you do anything, when you do something that makes you feel good and you feel you're able and capable of doing things, you feel empowered. Like, yeah. And subservience is not necessarily empowering. It can be if you are a people pleaser and you want to be that, but like, you don't have to be.
How can men oppress women when women and men are exactly the same? Well, it's because, again, it's all societal in their minds. It's that men are taught by society from the time they are little children to be vicious according to what they see as vice, which is being masculine, which is being competitive, which is taking risks, etc., etc. And since they are taught...
Nobody sees taking risks as... Taking risks is an important part of... Anytime you do something that's a change, you're taking a risk. When you move out of your parents' house, you're taking a risk. When you apply for a job, you're taking a risk. When you get in your car, you're taking a risk. But when you put down a payment for a car and you start paying it off, you're taking life is taking risks. That's not just a masculine thing. What is he talking about? Bravery is typically associated with masculinity, but no woman has ever had been so discouraged from not taking risks. The most common thing that women had to do for a long time was get with a man that they might not even really know that well for financial and social security. That is a huge risk. What is this guy talking about?
According to this power, which is, again, vice, according to what they think vice actually is, then this allows them to exploit people who are actually virtuous, which would be women. And this, by the way, allows them to have their cake and eat it too, to say that,
oh, hey, look, it's his thumbnail.
All men share in this power, but not everyone who shares in this power is a man. Therefore, you can say other women are just the same as men because they have things like internalized misogyny. That is to say, they operate according to the rules of this quote-unquote vice of male power, instead of the saintly virtues of female empowerment. So hopefully all of that backdrop will give you enough information of where I'm coming from when I say the following. So Kelly Sue DeConnick was talking about—
Holy shit! Half the video to get to the fucking point. Christ on a bike.
Men oppressing women by gatekeeping them, by keeping them out of comics. Now, a lot of you, again, in the comments said, that's ridiculous. But I came across another piece of information that made me think about this entire thing. It was my covering of the last Women of Marvel podcast. Again, I'll link that in the description. It was a discussion about the new fandom.
We're not watching that one, unless you guys really want me to.
And this woman, who again is very much steeped within this ideology, saying the exact same thing as Kelly Sue DeConnick, but giving a little more detail about it. She said she really liked comics. She ran into them and she really liked the idea of comics. She really liked the medium of comics. But then she went to a comic shop.
Oh, and now the images just are in a loop. I wonder if Wonder Woman's his favorite, because I think he has the most of her. Of course, she is the most iconic and the one that there's going to be the most content of her out there, but even still.
What did she find? Well, she found a place where she was very uncomfortable. She found a place which was dark and dingy, where things were disorganized, where some of the lights didn't actually work, and where people really weren't that friendly. Now, to her, this is the gatekeeping that they're talking about. These are what they would call, according to feminism, microaggressions. Again, you got to remember, they redefine everything, even simple language. Because, again, here's the thing. One of those virtues of being a woman, according to empowerment, is, again, the fact that they value security above risk-taking. And again, this is based upon a kernel of truth. I would say women are attracted to security.
Going into a dingy, shitty place, though, is not risk-taking. It's just putting yourself in a bad environment that you don't really need to be in. Like, if you're choosing between, okay, here's this nice comic shop I can go to, or here's this shitty comic shop, or rather, here's this, really, like, oh, I like superheroes and the stories that they have and stuff. I like these adventures and these things. And they're, I want to go to them, but they're gross and dingy and stuff, versus, oh, hey, here's this place that sells, I don't know, fucking nail polish or some shit, and it's bright and colorful and clean and all that. That's just going to be more attractive to anybody. That's not even like a masculine or feminine thing. I mean, if you had the choice of, okay, say you're in, you work, I've worked in these kind of environments, but say you're at someone's house or you're in an office at work, and there's a bathroom that is very gross, never gets cleaned. It's absolutely disgusting. You have that, and it's on the other side of the building, but there's a much cleaner one. Now, it's going to be a little bit more of a wait. You're going to have to, trek a little bit to go to, like I said, other side of the building. Maybe you're in a pretty big office, it might matter, but it's a lot cleaner. Or at least you think there's a chance that it might be. You're probably going to take your chances and see if you want to go to the cleaner one, see if you can find a cleaner one, a better one. That's not a feminine or masculine thing. That's I don't want to go in this gross environment and possibly even get some kind of disease from just fucking sitting on the toilet or some shit. It's not a man and woman thing. That's self-respect and taking care of yourself and practicing proper hygiene. Like, what? Okay.
Where men do take risks. This is seen within...
It's funny, though, by the way, because, the kind of stuff this guy's talking about is the kind of stuff that make men think, it's gay to clean their own ass and shit. It's fucking wild how people are about some of this stuff. It's absolutely insane. Or, just practicing proper hygiene. Oh, that's a hygiene. That's a woman thing. What the fuck? No. What is your problem?
Something they always go on about, which is the wage gap. They're saying, yes, men and women are not treated equally in the workplace. And why? Well, a conservative person would say, why? Because men typically take more high-risk jobs, which are more high-paying, and at the same time, men are ready to take that risk and to say to their employer, you're either going to give me a raise or I'm going to walk. Whereas the women are sitting there going, I don't want to rock the boat because that would jeopardize my security, therefore I'm not going to ask for a raise. And
okay, but why do they do that? Because women are socially told that they have to be, very subservient, like you said, not rock the boat. Women are culturally and socially and culturally conditioned to think that they have to be that way, whereas men are very conditioned to be more the go-getters and stuff. You see this in things like dating, for example. There are any instance where a woman has to, who doesn't date other women, has to actually try and ask a guy out rather than him asking her out, terrible. Like, women flirting, women trying to have game, all that stuff, awful. Why? Because they don't do it. Because they're not socially conditioned to learn about these things and behave in the way that that would require. It's the same thing when it comes to asking for raises and stuff like that. And he's right that that plays into why the wage gap is there, but those are societal and cultural issues, systemic issues, that can be addressed on the societal and social level. A lot of it can be as simple as a parent, encourage your daughter to speak up for herself and to not just like shrink in conversation or anything.
And so, yes, men typically get paid more and typically get a raise, whereas a woman doesn't, because they have this affinity to taking risks. Whereas women, I would say biologically, have this affinity to security, and therefore they don't do so, and therefore they don't get as much on the whole as men. It's not because they get paid less for the same job, it's just that they don't want to take those risks. And again, the whole point, if you argue an actual intersectional...
I think it's funny that he's saying biologically women don't want to take risks, because you know what women typically do biologically? Carry children. They typically get pregnant and carry children. Do you realize how much of a risk that is? You want to say women are risk adverse or adverse to risk? You realize that for a long period of time, women would just die in childbirth? That was a common thing? If anything, women are more biologically and evolutionarily conditioned to take risks more than men. It's just that societally and culturally, we've shifted that.
Feminist with these points is she's thinking you're actually making her point. She's thinking you're actually stating the exact same thing that I am trying to prove, because to her, the entire thing goes back to the idea that, you see, men do this because they are oppressing women, because they have this radicalized idea, this toxic masculinity, which says they should be taking these kinds of risks. And that's a vice, that's an evil thing that they shouldn't do. So again, if you argue with an actual intersectional feminist bringing up these points, they would say, you're proving my point, because you're just proving that the entire thing is based upon a teaching of societal norms of virtue and vices, according to no difference between a man and a woman. And again,
why is he on this virtues and vices shit? It's okay.
I know this is getting to be a long video, but it isn't. It's biological. It's something that's there within the female. If you know anything about biology, I'll just take a simple example. I don't know how many of you have ever gone hunting ducks, or actually know.
It's so simple. 20 minutes. So simple.
Anything about ornithology, but you might know that waterfowl, like ducks, the male is typically a bright color or has some bright colors incorporated into him, whereas the female is a drab one color or a drab kind of camouflage. Why? The entire point is because, being waterfowl, they go into marshes and lay their eggs there, and when a predator comes along, what do? Well, if it gets too close to the female and the eggs, the male takes off, and that bright color in his feathers allows the predator to actually catch them with their eye and say, I gotta follow that, there's the prey, that's where I gotta go, and it takes them away from the female and away from the eggs.
No! That is not why in the animal kingdom certain animals are brighter and are actually the more attractive ones, you could say, to the women. It's because of there's a phrase for it even in the pickup community, peacocking, which is where here. So when people do it, it's really fucking weird. But let's see if I can find some examples. I think that guy Mystery was probably the best example of look at like this kind of shit. Well, actually, this stuff isn't actually so bad. We'll do PUA PUA peacocking. Look at this shit. Okay, is this Mystery? I think this is Mystery, right? But whatever. It's this idea. Oh, right. I'm covering this up. It's this idea that you have you're dressed in such like a garish, weird way as to gain the attention of women. And similarly, peacocking in general, when a sort of like peacock the animal, men are the ones that put themselves, or male peacocks are the ones that put themselves on display because they are trying to attract a female mate. That is the reason why male ducks are more brightly colored than the female ducks. It's not to distract the prey. That might serve as a secondary function, but it's definitely not the main reason. Oh, actually, I don't need this anymore either. With this. before this. Okay.
This is biological within not just mankind, but within so many different kinds of species. Men are built to take the risks. Women are built to protect the eggs and stay there. So it's biological for women to want security. They are fundamentally built for having a child and then caring for that child. That puts them in a very...
Female Black Widows eat their mate. Female fish eat their young. And several other animals do too. Animals are fucked up, man. You can't, but humans are a different type of animal. Right.
Precarious position, not to mention the fact that their child is extremely weak, according to what most animals actually look like within nature. And so, they need security in order to fulfill these roles, whereas men are built to take the risks in order to give them that security. But again, I'm talking according to biological fact. I'm assuming that, yes, there is biologically something different between a man and a woman, but they fundamentally reject this.
Guys,
and the thing is, again, the fundamental...
I have this at 1.5 speed, by the way, just so imagine if we had this at just normal speed.
Rejection of this is to say that the idea of men taking risks is something which is a societally taught vice, whereas women and their need for security is actually the saintly way for all people to live. And this is the idea behind that woman walking into the comic store and feeling these microaggressions. Why? Because her security is not being fulfilled. She's walking into someplace dirty and disorganized. Dirty and disorganized does not lead to comfort. She's walking into a place which is dark and doesn't have very good lighting, and she sees this as an aggression towards her as a female because, again, this does not feed into her security at all. Quite the opposite. And again, I would add, although she didn't say this, I would add that every time, I suppose, one of the guys glances their way, they would see this as a microaggression. And so when they do things like look up and give the shop owner some indication that this light should actually be fixed.
It's like, men and women do have biological differences, but you know, they actually complement each other pretty well, and we can all find harmony and equality and be happy together. Then this guy, he's literally just constantly doing mental gymnastics here. This is absolutely wild. I am flabbergasted.
And he doesn't actually do it, well, that's turning from a microaggression into an actual aggression in their minds. Because again, it is not feeding into their security is the virtue in their minds, and when their virtue is not being met, the people who are not meeting this virtue within their own store, they're actually doing something which is toxic. They're actually participating in the oppression of women by not providing a safe space for women so that they feel comfortable within this store. This is what they mean by gatekeeping. And I'm sorry, but as a guy, I know exactly what is going on here because I've said this a number of times. I have 2 comic stores in the town that is closest to me. One is a very nice, well-lit place with these seating areas, and everything's labeled according to neat little boxes along the wall. And the other one, the other comic shop, is just a hole in the wall. It's in a basement, it's dark and dingy, things are strewn all over the place, boxes are falling apart, comics are everywhere. And where do I go of these 2 stores? Well, I go to the hole in the wall. Now, I go to the hole in the wall because, number one, the guy actually knows something about comics, whereas at the other store, it's just somebody working behind the cash register. And secondly, because this guy, even though I don't think we're anywhere even close to being politically aligned, doesn't push his politics on me, whereas the other nice, neat little store pushes it over and over again right in your face. And so, I go to the hole in the wall. But the hole in the wall is dark and dingy. But as a guy, I'm looking at dark and dingy going, yeah, I can deal with this. I really don't care. But what this woman was saying on this Marvel podcast, which, by the way, I think she is an editor who works for Marvel, but she is saying that, no, for women, they don't actually want to go into these places. Why? Again, because it's dark and dingy, and again, does not feed into their security in any way. So I understand. This is exactly what many comic shops are like, and this is the kind of comic shop that I'm actually attracted to. Because, and I don't think this is a bad thing, the guy is so disorganized, he doesn't have the time to shove his politics in my face, and so I don't get it shoved in my face, and I don't mind having to deal with dark and dingy in order to actually...
He likes that it's disorganized? This is just cap at this point. What the hell, man? What the fuck is this?
Get my comics from him. I actually quite enjoy going in and talking to him because we just talk about comics. But how does this entire thing lead to what I stated at the first, that comics just aren't for women? Well, here's the thing. I would say the exact opposite of what Kelly Sue DeConnick and intersectional feminists declare. I would say that there is a fundamental difference between a man and a woman. There is a biological difference, which makes men and women something different. Now, I would say they're equal in dignity, but different. Because, as I've said before, equal does not mean the same. Equal means balanced. So if you have an equation where you have 2 sides that are balanced, they don't have to be the same.
We don't say they have to be the... Okay, again, yes, there are some people that will kind of screech and advocate, but like that's not actual feminist theory, and that's not what we actually believe, that women and men are the same and they have to be like, no, that's not... Okay.
4 plus 1 equals 2 plus 3. That's a balanced equation. That is to say, those 2 things are equal, even though each of those sides are not the same. Men are 4 plus 1. Women are 2 plus 3. Equal, but different. And this is not something which is just societally taught. This is something which is actually part of the nature of being a man and being a woman. And further to that, I would say, again, going back to Augustine, I would say all of those things, which feminists separate into the good and the bad, I would take all of those things and say, yeah, they're all good. And they're all bad. It just depends on how you use them. Those things I talked about: competition, individuality, taking risks, cooperation. dialogue, a need for security. All of those things, not just some of them, but all of those things can be good or can be evil. It depends on how you use them. It depends on whether you're directed towards the truth when you employ those things, whether they are good or bad. It's not the things in themselves that are good or bad, it's how you use them. And so me, coming from that standpoint, I'm looking at the...
I'm trying to find that chick in the red with the sword, by the way, just so you know. I'm fully listening, that's why I'm interjecting whenever he's talking. But, you know, we already saw this. You know, you can just watch me scroll while this is going on, because... What the fuck, dude?
History of comics. And I would say, I'm looking at the history of comics and saying there is a distinct difference between one age of comics and another. There is a movement within this medium. And this movement within this medium, slowly but surely, went in a direction where comics are no longer for women. Now, this movement can be seen by the fact that early on, yes, there were many different kinds of comics. There were war comics, there were Western comics, there were romance comics, there were all these different kinds of comics. But eventually, it became the majority of what you have is superhero comics. Now, why would this actually happen? Well, this actually happens because...
All right, you know what? Okay, I'll tell you what. Let's let him talk about it first, and then... I can tell you the real reason.
I would say a change within storytelling media actually promoted this change. That is to say, part of the reason in North America that comics became so popular was because they were able to produce entertainment and stories in a way that was very cheap, very fast, and they could get it into the hands of people very easily, and at the same time, it didn't require a very high literacy level in order for people to actually access it. But over time, different kinds of these stories actually started to go into different mediums, which allowed them to be just as easily, if not more, accessible. And so you stopped having a great deal of Western comics and a great deal of war comics because you had different mediums, like television, like the movies, that were actually producing these stories in a faster, better way than comics could, and therefore people were getting those kinds of stories in a better medium than they could in comics, and therefore they didn't actually need those anymore. And I would say the exact same thing happened with romance comics, because this is one of the key points that Kelly Sue DeConnick goes on and on about. It's romance comics, and how comics used to be for women, but the shift away from comics in her mind came because men were gatekeeping them and keeping women out. I would say no, not at all. It is actually quite the reverse. It's the fact that women, like most people, growing up within the last century, actually became more and more literate. As people became more and more literate, they were more and more comfortable with actually picking up a book rather than just picking up a comic book. And so this book would not intimidate them. And I would say women started to pick up their romance stories more within romance novels than comics. Why? Because like everybody in our society, their literacy level increased to such a point where they could get better stories, faster stories, stories that appealed to them more within a novel than within comics. And again, I would say one of the reasons why women like novels more than comics is because, well, honestly, as a person who is now writing comics, there are severe limitations within comics. And I love these limitations. Why? Because when I get stuck with writing something, I just focus on these limitations until it gives me enough information to build the story, to come at the story in a different way. You only have so many pages within a story. It's either a 22-page story, or let's say you have a chapter which is 20 pages. That's a limitation. You can only put typically about 9 panels on a page. That's a limitation. You can only put so much dialogue on a page, or you're going to eclipse all of the art. That's a limitation. I focus on these limitations when I get stuck, and it actually helps me write. But the point is, they are limitations, and they are limitations on the reader. But for a woman, they would rather, as a point of security, have more control over the story. And so, an actual novel where they can visualize all these things themselves, that gives them more control over the story. And I would say this is why you have women's book clubs where you have a dozen women who are reading the exact same thing, but all coming up with a different interpretation of what is going on. Why? Because part of their security mechanism is prompting them to see this thing in the way that makes them most secure. But for comics, since it has these limitations, that is cut down to an extreme degree. But for guys, again, it's the exact opposite. Guys are more attracted to the visual than women are. This is why guys have girly magazines and women have romance novels, because guys are more attracted to the visual than women are. And at the same time, guys are more attracted to things that have limitations, because mechanical things, which again, we know from experiments done with children at extreme young ages, that males are typically attracted to the mechanical. And the mechanical is something that is built on limitations. It is something that, yes, this is this, that is that, they fit together here and there. This is what men are attracted to. And again, I would say the romance novels, which allow women to get the exact same story in a way that makes them more comfortable, is the reason why women typically abandon the reading of comics and then move towards other mediums to get the exact same story. So far be it from men driving women out of comics, I would say women...
Okay! So that was a lot. And a lot of untrue stereotypes, like men are visual, women are not. It's bullshit. Women are absolutely visual as well. We all are. If you see things and you can appreciate things that are aesthetically pleasing, you're visual as well. Now, the party mentioned about, oh, you know, it's cool, you know, you can just imagine different, you know, you imagine it in your head as opposed to, you know, reading it. No, that might be part of it. Something I think is cool about comics as I'm reading them more and more is that I can skip things that I don't want to read, like incessant narration. I can change little things. If I want to read something and in my head, Spider-Man is swearing and he's saying like damn and fucking shit, different swears, then I can do that. You can change little things here and there when reading a comic, just like you can when reading anything. But let's look at the actual reason as to how American romance comics died. Slow death, and no one seemed to care. As lover and reviewer of... By the way, romance comics are actually coming back. There's a really, 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 really good one. It's an adult comic, and when I say adult, I don't mean that as in, like, when I refer to adult entertainment. But it is... Is it by Image? I don't know, but let's swing... Okay. Wait, let's be careful here. It's a really good romance. Oh, it is by Image Comics. It's a really good romance comic done by a couple who are they're exploring an open relationship. They're exploring swinging. It is such a good comic. It is so good at dispelling and working around different what do you want to call it? Like stereotypes and misconceptions with swinging and open relationships and stuff like that. It is so good in general. Matt Hawkins wrote it with his wife. It is such a good series. It explores just so many different things. Yes, it is definitely sexual. It has nudity, all that. So again, like I said, it's an adult novel, but it is not male gazy, as a lot of people would call it. It isn't. It's not gratuitous. Is the thing. Everything serves its purpose, and it's such a. I cannot recommend this series enough. It is such a good series. But it is an example of a modern day romance novel. So I just wanted to point that out as an example of a modern day one. But let's answer that question as to why they died and no one cared. By the way, it wasn't just that. It was westerns, and it was horror, and it was slice of life. I mean, really, the only slice of life, the big one now, is Archie. But Archie comics, the Riverdale Archie, not Riverdale like the gritty CW show Riverdale. Although it's actually pretty good from what I've seen so far. But the Archie Andrews, the ginger Archie Andrews character. Anyway, 34%. Estimated total sales, 18 points of women comic fans outnumbering men under 18 among the older demographic time after time. What I have seen though is a lot of young girls around high school age turn to manga, where Japanese publishers have fostered. 100% by the way. Anime and manga super popular with women, extremely so, especially for fulfilling sexual and romantic fantasies. Featuring high school girls, just like them discovering love and relationships, but still, where are the romance comics from an American perspective, and why aren't mainstream publishers capitalizing on the demographic? The more I looked into it, the more I found, how they rose to prominence. It all started at the end of World War II, when Golden Age comics was starting to come to an end. During the war, superheroes had been a mainstay in the comic industry, fighting crime, upholding morality, fighting Nazis a lot too, by the way, which I didn't realize how not only within its roots of like superhero comics, but just in general, fighting Nazis is a very common thing in comics in general. Anyway, they had seen enough villains overseas. In a few short years, superhero comics were pushed to the wayside to make room for humor and Marvel. This is actually a Marvel comic, by the way. Marvel used to make romance comics, by the way. Archie was created, Patsy Walker, that's what this is, obviously. The Post, Young girls were also starting to grow up, and that brought along with it natural curiosity about love. Combine this with listening to paper. Yeah, and even if you look at this, like, relatively seductive, designed for the more adult readers of comics, all true love stories, Trying to find out though. Yeah, a lot of the stuff, by the way, by the time and we'll get to the Comics Code of Authority, but a lot of that had issues with this stuff too. Comics themselves were certainly a product of their time. Yeah, sometimes showing what would today be considered very sexist imagery in stories. Yeah, 100%. Fawcett's, yeah, a lot of, even in like early superhero stuff, a lot of women were, I would say, definitely written pretty sexistly. Like, hell, even the love interest, like Barry Allen's Iris West and Green Lantern's, oh fuck, what's her name? I want to say Fiona, but that's not it. It's like Francine or something. It starts with an F. Hold up. Forget her name. No, Carol Ferris. Okay, right. Anyway, her and Iris and these characters were written as just such, honestly, bitches. Like, they were written very unlikable, and I'm just like, what? Like, what? They're constantly putting the hero down? Like, what is this? Why is this, like, attractive? Anyway, why is this the character we're supposed to be rooting for? Anyway, and with the woman absolved of her sins, okay, yada, yada, yada. Notorious for being sleazy, also commonly featured sexist imagery, but more violent or racy in nature. However, there were some titles. So I actually only, well, I did read Swing, and I read other comics like that. But generally speaking, I stick to superhero stuff. I'd be interested to actually check out some of the earlier romance stuff and see how that kind of stuff was. Okay. Oh. I don't think that even affected anything for you. Okay, in the second half of 1949, 246 romance issues were published by 22 companies with over 1,000 stories. Love on the Racks, 43 to look at. Okay, look at another way. Da, 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 da. Okay, market started to get flooded. Taking a. Okay. Romance market started to flounder. Okay, in 1950 rolled around. Okay, the romance market started to flounder, and titles were dropped one after another. It's estimated 80%. Okay, how they died a slow death. Here we go. 1950, the comics industry had shot itself in the foot with romance comics. So many imitations were out that readership couldn't keep up. Their rapid ascension to prominence on the racks was met with an equally rapid decline. To put it in perspective, from January to June of 1950, 332, Jesus Christ, in 6 months, 332 issues of romance comics were published. From July to December, there were only 150, with a total of 61 from October through December of that year. Love on the Rack 63, Marvel, okay, right. So basically, it was just oversaturation. However, with the excess titles gone, publishers could now consolidate their romances, and the industry began to even out again. As publishers continued to drop titles, 5 companies stepped in and took control of the market. Marvel, DC, ACG, Prize, and Charlton. By the way, fun fact real quick, Charlton is where the character Blue Beetle originally comes from, as well as Captain Atom. Anyway, who are now with DC Comics. Anyway, Charlton was by far the strongest publisher in the genre, with its ability to keep their personal printing presses running constantly to churn out new content. While many publishers continued to falter during the 50s, Charlton kept chugging along, as evidenced by the Kirby Museum's third graph. Jack Kirby, by the way, is like referred to as Jack the King Kirby. He's like extremely revered in the comics world. Resentment for the genre had also always been present, but it was about to come to a boiling point as Frederick... yep, here we go. Yep, Seduction of the Innocent. Yep. I was making friend in 1954, offering now debunked evidence that comics led to juvenile delinquency. By the way, I haven't actually gotten to talk about this specifically yet, but the Comics Code of Authority is basically like a lot of stuff that we see today and we've seen throughout time. You know, satanic panics. Now we have Don't Say Gay here in Florida. You know, all kind of different things that are put in place because it's for the children. Think of the children. And yeah, people do this all the time with entertainment and all kind of different things. It's ridiculous. Anyway, yada yada yada. Okay, so ground rules for any and all future comics to be published. These rules included the elimination of crime plots. Sorry, the first one just got me. The elimination of crime plots. Okay. Nudity, violence, bad girl/boy stories, so no one can be like a morally gray anti-hero character. How times have changed. Suggestive poses, illicit sex, the disrespecting of parents, and talking about divorce in a humorous or desirable light. Oh my god. The code looked to eliminate all controversy, emphasizing the value of the home and sanctity of marriage. As Michael Nolan comments, the rules of ethics were so pure, they would have done a nunnery proud. God damn. That is fucking wild. Okay, Comics Code, okay, yes, it did technically last until 2011. But let's be real, after the Silver Age, like from the 70s and on, people just didn't really care about it anymore, right? So we're talking about CCA was not the only problem for romance during those decades. Okay, cool, we're not. The Silver Age, by the way, in the Comics Code of Authority is the reason there's like a whole bunch of like bullshit, like Batman having rainbow suits and shit like that. It's fucking, like, all the dumb shit. Anyway, it quickly became apparent to publishers in 1956 that superhero comics were again gaining popularity, and thus started the Silver Age of comics. By the 1960s, only National, DC, and Charlton were competing in any meaningful way in the romance genre. This is true. Marvel, in the romance genre, okay, never mind. And dropping it to only 8 point... there were a lot of similar reasons as well that caused the romance genre to fade into obscurity, other than the effects of the CCA, including the rise of the feminist movement in the 60s and 70s, the rising popularity of television, the widespread publication of cheap paperbacks, the lack of women writers and artists on staff, and the rise of comic specialty stories that refused to carry them. The CCA guidelines were the turning point for romances, but these smaller issues also proved too much for the genre to handle. Not because women just became more literate, and they're not as visual as men. Women were leaving mainstream comics, turning to whatever else is available, whether it be paperback, romances, television, or the underground comics movement. The romance genre had its last year of real impact in 1973, when it was less than 7% of all issues before dying out completely. But its death passed many comic readers by unawares as the mainstream comic industry returned to its superheroes and as they figured a male-dominated audience. Why nobody cared. This is a really good article, by the way. A history of... That's interesting, okay. In the course of my research, it became apparent that there was not only a lack of romance comics from an American perspective, but that there was also a lack of research on the subject of the romance comics genre. So far, I've found 2 books that deal fully with American romance comics, Love on the Racks and Agonizing Love. And a few that had at least one chapter devoted to the genre, The Comic Book Makers, and From Girls to Girls. There were a few web articles as well, but I've had to rely for the most part on Michael Nolan's comprehensive analysis for most, if not all, of this article. By the way, real quick, a really good thing... Oh no, wait, do I not... It should be. Here we are. There's a really good database, the Queer Comics database, in which you can find... do they have like a About Us? Okay, here. Queer Comics database is not affiliated with any publishers. Data. Okay. Okay, cool. It doesn't really. Anyway, what they do, it's really cool because you can find stuff by series, by creators, by tone, genre, audience. So, like, for example, what I was talking about before. Where is it? No, that's See, this is all my bookmarks, by the way, of like characters and teams and shit, and series. Where was it? Okay, so like, for example, the one I bookmarked on this is polyamory, and Swing should be here. I hope it is. Ah, here it is. No, this is Sunstone. Sunstone is actually takes part in the same universe as Swing, though. Sunstone is about a lesbian couple, and I believe they're open as well. Yeah, they are. Yeah, they're open as well. They're actually the first couple that the main characters in Swing play with. They do refer to it as playing and stuff too, which I think is really cute because, you know, sex is a form of play. Anyway, or at least it should be. Anyway, moving on with all this. Point is, this is a good database for if you want to find like good, you know, queer, even feminist or just women-centric, whatever, you know, a good database for that kind of stuff. I just thought of it because of what they were talking about with like web articles and shit. I don't think I'm ever going to find out who that character is, by the way. It's okay. Oh, whatever. Okay. Okay, Love on the Racks. Okay. He's officially revitalized the comics industry. Specific issues of titles such as Young Romance only go for around $10 to $20. Okay, this is not weird. Okay. The lack of attention collectors and historians had for romance also showed in the reprints and other related books that came out after the end of Romance Comics. DC had always had reprints being published of their older comics since 1970s, but the romance titles didn't get their own book until Heartthrobs. The best of DC romance comics came out in 1979. This is the only title developed fully to romance. Why? Until 2003. Oh, IDW. IDW is the company that makes, well, at least they did do a lot with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and they also are the current run, or it's what the current run for the Sonic the Hedgehog comics are under now. They used to be under Archie, now they're under IDW. Anyway, oh, I lost it. Here we are. 2003 with John Benson's Romance Without Tears. That looks specifically at the comics from St. John Publishing. Most recently, we have for those that didn't fully deal with the genre, the old mainstream. Okay, the world's 20. Okay. According to okay, as far as the mainstream publishers were concerned, boys were in and girls were out. Yeah, but the end of the okay, cool. I think we get it, right? Yeah, so, look, a lot of things ebb and flow with time, right? Trends and all that stuff. But I think an important thing to note with this as well is that a lot of it comes down to how this stuff is marketed. So, Nintendo, for example, Nintendo, I want to see if I can find like an image of this. All right. When Nintendo was first getting started, they had to choose, because the Nintendo Entertainment System was a, what do you call it? It was a toy, technically, right? So it had to be put in the toy aisle. Well, it had to be either put in boys' toys or girls' toys. They decided to put it in boys' toys, and because of that, a lot of Nintendo stuff and video games in general started being marketed more and more toward boys specifically, rather than girls. Now, you would still have things where, like, even this, right? We have a dad with, can you actually see? Okay, cool. You have a dad with a mom and the two boys playing Super Mario Bros. On their NES, but nobody, like, you don't really have girls, like, marketed toward this stuff. Similar thing happened with computers. The way that products are marketed has a lot to do with how they're actually perceived and consumed by people in general, which, I mean, that's the whole point of marketing in the first place. So that's fair, but yeah. But what have we learned so far with this guy's video? He lies a lot. And yeah. Even that whole women just became more no, clearly it was a lot more complicated than just that. That wasn't even a reason that was cited.
Women left comics because they could find the stories that they wanted and the things that actually speak to them more as women in different mediums in an easier and more digestible format. And the point being that with that, as an industry, well, what does an industry typically do? Well, just like the whole thing of abandoning the comics of Westerns and war comics for a more lucrative concentration on superhero comics, this is exactly what they did with romance comics as well. They know that as an industry, if I want to sell as much product as possible, which is what an industry is supposed to do, then they're going to concentrate on the product that is going to sell the best. And again, with all these competing kinds of media starting to pile up, they concentrated on those things and those people which were the ones that were going to read their stories, which were attracted to those stories, attracted to the limitations of the colors, to the limitations of the printing method, to the limitations of the story in a dozen different ways. And who's actually attracted to that? Men are actually attracted to that. No, I'm not saying as a woman you can't be attracted to that. I'm not saying that
I don't think we're attracted to the limitations. I really don't.
As a woman, there's something wrong with you if you are attracted to that. I'm just saying, as a whole, as women in general, if you are attracted to those things, you're probably an anomaly. And so, Kelly Sue DeConnick was, in fact, in some small way, right when she talks about these comics over the last couple of decades not being for women. She was absolutely right. Again, mixing a little bit of truth with a big lie in order to try to convince you of her ideology. She was actually right within that.
It's funny because that's literally what this guy's done this entire time. Mixed, except he mixed many lies with a little bit of the truth. What the hell?
Comics have not been built for women for a long time. And I would say, even with the efforts of Marvel and they're trying to build them towards women right now, it's not going to work. Why? Because there's so many kinds of media out there right now that women are provided with their stories in a dozen different kinds of mediums better than comics. And therefore, they're not going to be attracted once again to this medium, not in large mass numbers anyway. And I'm sure someone will say, well, look at Japan. How come they have so many women reading manga over there? You can't make this generalized statement. I would say, yeah, because if you're looking at Japan, that's an entirely different dynamic between men and women and how each of them should act. And I would say it is a culture built heavily upon ignoring some fundamental
Wait, but anime and manga is super popular with American, British, etc. women as well. Not just women in Japan.
Within men and women, and actually imposing upon people societal norms which ignore some of the things which a man and a woman fundamentally, biologically actually want. And that was generated because of many different pressures within the history of the formation of the nation of Japan itself. The fact that it is an island, the fact that historically it had very little farmland in order for them to feed their people, how this all shaped how people interacted with each other and became completely dependent upon societal norms rather than individuality, etc., etc. Now you can claim that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I would say it's a—
Oh, by the way, I want to go back to that whole women aren't visual thing. They do the same kind of thing when they talk about adult entertainment. That's just not true, because you know what a lot of the anime and manga that women watch or read are? Hentai. Not all of it, not by a long shot, but a lot of women that consume adult content in that way, that kind of adult content, are watching hentai or reading hentai. So you miss me with this, oh, women aren't visual bullshit.
A completely different system, which would have to have its own analysis on its own. And therefore, there's no dismissing all of the things which I've just gone over by saying, look at Japan. And here's the thing. Here's what it all boils—
My problem with manga, by the way, is that it's black and white. I can't do black and white comics. I just can't. I can do a black and white movie because like that's part of the vibe, but I can't do, yeah.
It all boils down to the fact that these women who are in comics right now, like Kelly Sue DeConnick, are not actually telling a story. And again, I would say, this is not me saying this. I have covered a number of interviews from video and print with Kelly Sue DeConnick, and she specifically says this over and over again. The point of her writing comics is not to produce a good story for people, it is to push her ideology.
She literally said the opposite of this shit in her interview. 2 interviews we watched of her, where she seems pretty consistent and pretty good. I really like her approach, actually.
She wants to change the world into something which agrees with her ideology. She states this—
everybody wants to do that. Everybody wants to change the world into something that agrees with their ideology. If you don't want to do that, then you either already agree with how the world is, or you're lying. Like,
over and over again. This is not me stating it, this is me restating what she herself has stated. And if this is the mindset of her and other people like her, whereas they don't want to tell a story, they want to push their ideology, you can see why they can't acknowledge the fundamental fact that would correct all of the mistakes within modern comics. And that fundamental fact is simply to realize that there's a difference between a man and a woman. And further from this, again, if we go back to those fundamental principles of why they're doing this because they want to be vicious. They want to take the idea of virtue and turn it into a vice, and the idea of vice and turn it into a virtue. And they want to do all that because they want to reject truth and be vicious, to be licentious. But the thing is, as I'm always saying, a hero, a true traditional hero, is based upon true virtue. That is to say, virtue which is confirmed by reality around you. And as I have said a number of times and will probably say a number of times in the future, this whole thing leads to the fact that these people who push this ideology, as long as they are pushing this ideology, they don't know what true virtue is, and therefore they can never write anything even remotely close to a true hero.
You know what my favorite thing about this is? How he says women aren't for comics aren't for women, women don't like comics. Yeah. Famously, women hate comics. Women hate comic characters. They hate dressing up as them, especially. And even more famously than that, if women do like them, it's only ever ones that are not attractive. You'll never have, especially hot women that you might want a relationship with. You could never possibly find a partner that you share interest with. At Comic-Con, for example, never that likes comics. Not going to happen. Women don't like comics, and if they do, they're definitely not attractive. Yeah, never. I love it. I love you can look up, you can just like easily find this stuff, and it just everything the guy says is like, oh, women don't like comics. Comics are for, yeah, not at all. Women absolutely hate comics. 100%. They hate them. Yep, they hate them. They hate dressing up as them. They hate reading them. This is not a comic character. They hate reading them. They hate them. Yeah, comics aren't for women, of course. The fuck? What's wrong with this dude? Seriously. Like, seriously. I don't know. It's wild. It's absolutely wild. Anyway, people like this guy... it's so funny how much he projected with this idea that, like, oh, they want to push an agenda. Because if you look through his content, and a lot of people that make this kind of content, right, they all do this shit, right? They all do this where they are clearly pushing this agenda of essentially, yeah, comics aren't for women, right? All this kind of shit, right? All this, like, Marvel calls eco-terrorist murder a necessary evil. What is... I don't know who that character is, but I'm gonna guess, just based on this, there's a character who killed someone who was an eco-terrorist and justified it, and they probably had some other character, like, I don't know, the X-Men or Iron Man or Spider-Man or someone, be like, hey, let's not do that. You know what I mean? Like, and she was like, but he was evil. He was, you know, wait a minute. Eco-terrorism can actually be kind of based, depending on many different things. It's just nature of... Okay. Your utopia, my dystopia? What? How sci-fi and fantasy are about to... Okay.